It is what gives us order in our lives. It is what unifies us. It is what identifies us, that is, gives us a sense of identity, tells us who we are, what it is that we should be doing. If we were centered in our culture, we would understand that we were at war, that we are at war. But without being centered in our culture, we don't understand that, so we don't know how to behave. We don't know that we need to identify the enemy who has already identified us as victim. So that culture directs our collective behavior and commits us, gives our lives commitment, a sense of commitment, gives us nia, gives us purpose. And it is therefore political. Culture is political. Culture is not something you do aside, something you do in museums. It's not peripheral. It is not tangential. It is the center. Culture is political and it is ideological. Every group of people that are part of a culture are also part of and share a worldview. And that worldview is the way in which they relate to and define reality, the way they understand the universe, and the definitions of reality with which they work and that they use. So the two concepts of culture and worldview are very important. It is how culture relates to thought, and that is very much a part of what it is that we will be talking about this evening. So we want to move then to, just briefly, what is the nature of the African worldview? Why are we doing this? Because we must center ourselves if we are to engage in critical analysis. Where are we going to center ourselves? In the African worldview. In the African worldview, we conceive of the universe as a spiritual whole, as a unified spiritual whole. And it is spirit which connects things, which joins things. It is a connecting force. We understand that as African people. We, as African people, are affirmed by the natural order, and we indeed affirm the natural order. And the natural order is the basis of a ma'atic order, which you know as truth, justice, righteousness, harmony, right order, balance, ma'at. Our universe we understand to be spiritually based. It is life-giving and life-receiving. And so the principle of reciprocity is very important for us. The power that we get through connectedness. That's very, very important. Because what we're going to be doing is contrasting this worldview with the European mindset, with what is called the utamawazo in the book Yurugu. The symbolic forms allow us as African people to reach to the depths of truth, layers of truth. The universe is multidimensional. It is not limited to the outer, to the surface, to the superficial for African people, for the African mind. We must think deeply. We seek to attain harmonious development. And having been affirmed by nature, all we have to do is to be in tune with ourselves, with our African selves, and we will be in tune with the universe. Life, again, is a process of personal transformation where we move towards and from the universal life force, the source. And so these are some of the aspects of the African worldview where the lineal is enveloped within the cyclical and the spiral, so that our sacred concepts are non-lineal concepts. We transcend the lineal. The self for us is a communal self and a cosmic self. It is not an isolated ego. And we are accountable. We are accountable to Ma'at. And we know things through the rhythm.
That's right. That's right.
Through the rhythm of understanding, the rhythm of feeling, the rhythm which joins, the rhythm of the drum. And metaphor, symbol, becomes the statement of the deepest truth. It is said by the Dogon people that in the beginning, Ama, the creator, the creative principle, created the first beings, the primordial beings, according to the sacred and divine principle of complementarity, giving every one of those beings a male and a female soul, so that every primordial being had twin souls. But in this process of creation, there was one of these primordial beings who, in his arrogance, aborted himself from the process of gestation, and so took himself away before he was complete, before indeed he had a female twin soul. And he sought to create an earth which was more perfect than that which Ama could create. But as he began to do his work, he realized that the beings which he created were deficient, were incomplete, as he was deficient and incomplete, so that he was unable indeed to create a world in order or in a state of harmony. Realizing this, he returned to Ama, seeking his female twin soul. But Ama had given that soul away. According to some versions of this story, Ama then used that female twin soul in unison with a male soul to perfect Earth. But that soul was no longer accessible to this being. And so he was destined to search eternally for the wholeness, the completion, which could never be his. That being is Yurugu. On reading that, I knew that the title of this book had to be Yurugu. And I was moved, we were moved to create the conceptual framework that involved the Asili, the concept of the Asili, the cultural seed. And this conceptual framework allows us to unmask Yurugu, to see Yurugu for what he really is, to understand how he works, and more importantly, how he affects us. That is what we need to be about now. So the analysis which we came up with, the Asili analysis I call it, helps us to see consistency, helps us to see pattern in European behavior. It tells us about the logic of the culture, how the culture works. And it helps us to ask the right questions. The Asili approach or analysis in this way becomes a grounding presence, a centering concept. Helps us to understand how Yurugu is different from us. The Asili concept is the key to explain their behavior. And it allows us at the same time to be comprehensive. It always provides a context within which we place European behavior, European institutions, so that we can understand them. The Asili concept allows us to particularize Europe. That is very important, because what they have done is to present themselves to us as being universal. So we're not sure when we're looking at them and when we're looking at ourselves and when we're looking at something which is true for all people. We must learn to recognize them specifically for what they are. We must learn to be able to see their expressions of nationalism. We must be able to recognize their statements of political interest, which they couch in terms of objectivity. We must learn to be able to identify expressions of their ideology, which are their commitments, not ours. So that the Asili concept then is both analysis, in that it enables us to understand various aspects of the culture, and it is synthesis, in that it allows us to bring it all together and to understand it as a whole. The approach then to this study is ideological in focus. It is political. We are at war. It reveals the monolithic or singleness, the monolithic nature of the culture. And we look more specifically at how they have used a concept of truth to promote their own culture and their own nationalism. And then told us that they were being universal. Defined this truth that they created, this so-called truth, in universalistic terms, a phony universalism. Said that it was non-cultural, non-political, or apolitical. And so, again, the concept of objectivity, one of the most pernicious, dangerous, effective concepts that the European came up with. And so what we're going to do now is to move through this analysis. We're going to see how it is possible to